It is early morning. On the fringes of Nariva, the red-bellied macaws noisily preen at the tops of the royal palms, which are their nighttime roosts. They are preparing to leave for the feeding trees deep in the heart of the swamp. They are some of the last of their breed to be found here. Their cousins, the blue and gold macaws, were once also native to Nariva, but they were too beautiful and too accessible for their own good, and are now considered extinct in the wild throughout the island. This is Harilal. He too roosts on the fringes of the swamp. He has lived here for the past 10 years in this small house which he built with his own hands. The swamp provides his home and his livelihood. He cultivates a few acres of rice and grows some okros, dasheen, peppers and tomatoes for himself and his family. From the rich, dark mud in the shallows, he harvests the black conch, which he sells at the roadside to passing motorists. This is Shamo, another of the swamp's inhabitants. Along the banks of the channels between the mangrove roots, he sets his homemade bamboo traps for the blue crab. The crabs used to be abundant, but now, as with the once plentiful black conch, stocks are dwindling. So too with the cascadoo, for which Shamo and his young brother Bobby fish in the shallow pools. Nariva in the morning, a place seemingly of peace and tranquility. Man in harmony with nature. Until not so long ago, the Nariva swamp was just such a place. Situated on Trinidad's east coast, it is the largest and the richest of all the wetlands on the island, with a great wealth of wildlife. Several of the species found here are endangered. Some are on the verge of extinction. So valued is Nariva that it was recently highlighted as a wetland of international importance under the Ramsar Convention, an international forum for the preservation of wetlands. This is the other face of Nariva in the morning. The smoldering carcasses of trees lie where they were bulldozed, in tangled, smoking heaps, and the formerly lush landscape takes on the appearance of a wasteland. But this is destruction with a purpose, for where once the reeds and marshes of the wetlands grew, and the proud trees of the swamp forest threw their shade, rice now grows. Acre after acre of paddy stretching into the distance, and therein lies the dilemma. Should we sacrifice what some might call unproductive, valueless swamp in the interest of producing more food for an ever-growing population? Or should we protect what is left of our few remaining acres of marsh and swamp forest with their populations of manatees, monkeys and macaws as a national treasure, a part of our natural heritage? Man, unlike the other animals sharing this planet, has the unique ability to change his surroundings. One of the reasons he does this is to create an environment in which he can secure food for his family and community. This manipulation of nature for nurture, rather than the gathering of food wherever it grows, has contributed largely to the world's population explosion. And as the numbers of people continue to increase, the land needed to feed and house them must also expand. This happens at the expense of the natural habitats in between. With natural areas diminishing, the habitat that is left becomes more and more important to a country's wildlife, and the conflict between wildlife management and land use for rural development escalates. The only way to resolve such conflicts satisfactorily is to balance benefits gained by the one use against those afforded by the other. But that is more easily said than done. The situation with Nariva swamp provides a classic example of how unregulated development might well lead to dire consequences for all concerned. The monetary value of crops grown in the swamp is easy to determine. This, however, is a minor part of the real value of Nariva. For the swamp is in fact a sort of bank in which is deposited a considerable portion of the country's natural wealth, its flora and fauna. Originally covering well over 6,000 hectares, the actual area today of virgin swamp vegetation, comprising reeds, marshes and swamp forest, has been reduced by almost a half. Concentrated into this relatively small area is Nariva's living treasure, its plants and animals. From the first shafts of morning sunlight awakening the roosting macaws, through the mid-morning heat with the howler monkeys basking in the sun, to the hour of sunset when diurnal animals curl up for the night and those creatures that are active in the dark begin to emerge, one is surrounded by life. The very ground is teeming with life. These forest bachaks are busy transporting leaf cuttings to their subterranean nests where they will be used as a compost for the bachak's fungus gardens. A bachak nest can house over 1 million individuals and can cover an area as large as a basketball court. This wasp is getting on with the task of raising the next generation. She digs a small tunnel in the earth and provisions it with a grasshopper upon which she will lay an egg. The larva will have fresh grasshopper to feed on. This species prefers to build its house. It does this by collecting mud at a nearby waterhole and carefully molding an urn-shaped cell. Caterpillars are the preferred diet here. There are many such wasps to be found in Nariva, each species with its own special design of abode and prey preference. The vulnerability of life in Nariva swamp is vividly demonstrated by the plight of the macaws. An important source of food, shelter and nesting sites for these macaws are the royal and Maurice palms. The magnificent blue and gold macaws which once flourished here shared this resource. They were captured by felling the dead palm stems in which they nested. If one was lucky and the chick was not killed with the impact, someone got a pet macaw, but there was one fewer nesting site. Dead palms are not an abundant resource. Indeed, the macaws have to compete with other species like the crimson-crested woodpecker, which also use these trees. We have already lost the blue and gold macaw. Destruction of the palm forests is a sure way of losing the red-bellied macaws as well. Another threatened bird is the Maurice oriole, much sought after for the sweetness of its song. It has now been trapped almost to the point of extinction. A few pairs still survive, but one would have to be very fortunate to get a glimpse of them. Altogether, over 200 species of birds can be found in Nariva. To the migratory birds, wetlands such as Nariva are an essential part of the cycle of their existence. This is because they have had to fly many hundreds or even thousands of miles from their northern breeding grounds to the wintering grounds in the south. Covering such vast distances, they must rest frequently en route. Swamp areas such as Nariva and similar wetlands act as stepping stones. Destruction of one of these stepping stones may have disastrous consequences if the distances between adjacent wetlands increase beyond the range of the birds. Beneath the dark surface of the swamp's larger open water areas, the last remaining herds of manatee in the southern Caribbean rove. These huge and gentle animals are now confined to smaller and smaller pockets as the area of the swamp dwindles. The manatee, like the macaws and the Maurice orioles, are protected by law, but in spite of this, habitat destruction and poaching continue to take a heavy toll. Sharing the depths with the manatee are many more rare and beautiful aquatic creatures. These include the anaconda. Anacondas, or wheels as they are known locally, are among the largest snakes in the world and can attain a length of over 10 meters. The Suriname toad, another underwater dweller, mimics an old bit of wood or leaf with wavy appendages and lies in wait on the bottom, practically invisible. As unwary fish swim by, those that come close enough are unceremoniously gobbled up. Between the roots of the mangrove, millions of shrimp-like creatures live. The protection given by the roots and the abundance of food make a perfect nursery for the marine fish that come here to spawn. These fish would not survive for long if deprived of their breeding grounds. The terrestrial life of Nariva is every bit as rich as that beneath the surface of the still waters. Within the marsh itself are several islands of dry land supporting many species. The largest of these islands is Bush, which covers about 1,600 hectares and is a wildlife sanctuary, having been so designated by the government in 1968. Today, as then, colonies of red howler monkeys roam through the canopy, feeding on the fruits of forest trees and loudly proclaiming their presence. The smaller white-faced capuchins are here in abundance too. They inhabit the same general area as the red howlers, but are careful to keep their distance from their larger and more aggressive cousins. No longer to be found on Bush Island, but still occurring in the forested areas bordering the swamp, are the collared peccary or quenk. At one time, herds of as many as 20 animals were not uncommon. Other mammals of Nariva's swamp forest include the beautiful and timid brocket deer. Also the agouti, which is much prized for its meat. The lac, the largest of all our rodents, and another favorite of the connoisseurs of local game, lives here too. The official tally of mammals to be found in the Nariva swamp is 57 species, of which 32 are bats. Saccopteryx, or the sack-winged bat, is unlike the majority of bat species which frequent caves and very dark areas during the day. Saccopteryx roost high on the sides of buttressed trees and sometimes in the tree itself.